welcome to the third presentation on chairing effective board meetings. I am Dr. Pardon Mwansa, and the presentation that we will cover today is the third in a series of 3. On the topic of chairing effective board or church board meetings, we began first of all by looking at preparing for effective meetings. We spent time outlining and coming to the conclusion that if you prepare thoroughly well for a board meeting, at the time when you have the meeting, half of your battles have already been won. I believe sincerely 50% of the success of any board meeting is dependent or constitutes the preparation of the board. In the second presentation, I dealt with chairing the board, in which we covered the skills, the purpose, the details of how to chair effective meetings. Today, we are assuming, after you had thoroughly prepared for a board meeting, and after the chairperson and the secretary and the board members have conducted the meeting well, they now need to come to the third and last phase, which is communicating effectively the decisions of the board. And so this presentation is entitled Communicating Board Decisions. Communicating Board Decisions. I will again state what I have stated in the first and second presentation, that while all the principles that I have been presenting in the first presentation, in the second presentation, and now in this presentation, all the principles we've covered can be utilized in any board meeting. But because this presentation is tailored toward chairing effective church board meetings, my examples have been those of the setting of a church board. But by no means indicating by that you cannot use the principles for other board meetings. So to give it the context, again, the focus is the church board, and we have belabored the point that the church manual, we have clearly stated the church manual is the basis and the document that guides local church decisions. We have also indicated that we have best practices on how to chair meetings and how to communicate meetings. So, in my presentation today, I'll be covering the statements or the expectations of the church board, the church manual, and also what is done in the best practices in this matter. Our first subject on the topic, communicating actions of the board, I would like us to look at the purpose of minutes. First of all, what are minutes? Minutes are the recorded transactions or actions of what transpired at a given board meeting. So minutes reproduce exactly what happened at a meeting and the decisions that were made, so that months or even years from the time the board meeting was held, a person can pull the minutes and be able to know what was decided at that time and by who. So that's minutes. So the purpose of minutes is, number one, to keep an accurate record of actions taken by the board. The key word here is keep an accurate record. And we will go through how that is done. It's important that accurate records are kept because when people sit in a meeting and they take actions or propose resolutions or agree to resolutions, those resolutions must be reflected accurately in the language that will mean exactly what the intent of the board members was. So the minutes purpose is to keep an accurate record for purposes of use in the future. Number two, the purpose of minutes is for communicating decisions of the board. When you have taken actions and they are now recorded in minutes, there is now a need to communicate those decisions to appropriate people, to appropriate bodies that need to know that such an action was taken. Communicating decisions to board members, communication decisions of the board becomes so important because if all you do is take minutes, then you shelve them, then there will be little action that will be done because people don't know what it is you are expecting from them out of the actions that you took. And the last one that I have here on the screen for the purpose of minutes is reference when needed. Somebody sometime in the past will say, what did we decide on this matter at that time? And when somebody asks for what did we decide on this matter at that time, then you say, we can check. We can check and refer to the minutes. So minutes also serve the purpose of as a reference when needed. Let me deal with taking of minutes in a board meeting. Taking minutes is a very, very important part and actually not as easy as it might sound. The easiest way to take accurate minutes has certain critical elements that the clerk, who is the secretary of the church board, must keep in mind. And so we're going to look at the elements that constitute taking of minutes. Number one, stating the proposed action and amendments, if any. Let me put it this way and in the context. Each time an item is on the agenda, the intention is to discuss it and take an action on that particular agenda item. I articulated in previous presentations that there are generally two categories of actions in church boards. Those that deal with plans and those that deal with disciplinary cases. And those that deal with plans, when an item has come, let's say, from the finance committee of the church board, they bring a budget for approval. That budget is not only in printed page, but it has been distributed to all board members, and the chairperson and the secretary of the board have that document in front of them, making corrections or making notations on the document. The document has been presented, and after it has been presented, a motion is made. And the motion will read, or will be something like, Chair, I move that the board members considers and approve the budget proposed before them. What this means is, the secretary already has a document which will go in the minutes. That document will not go in the minutes the way it is, because when it has been proposed, people will start making comments to the document. They may say, Chair, the amount allocated to women ministry is not sufficient. Can we take 200,000 from the youth department and put it on women ministries? And when it is resolved that that happens, they will change the figures. The secretary and the chairperson, who are the two people critically responsible for the accuracy of the minutes, will note and indicate to the person presenting, we have resolved to amend, after a process of amendment has taken place, that 200,000 be transferred to women ministries from the youth department. They will change it. I usually use my red pen. They will change it and add it to here. When all the comments have been made and observations entertained and amendments approved, the document now will be ready for a vote. At that time, the chairperson and the secretary, who are the two people who are responsible for making sure the accuracy of the minutes is reflected, will say, now, ladies and gentlemen, before we take an action, I'm going to ask the secretary to highlight the amendments made to this document. The secretary will then say, Chair, on page so and so, we amended this. Page so and so, we amended this. Page so and so, we amended this. Chair, these are the amendments. Then the chairperson will say, board members, with the amendments that you have proposed that have been captured in the document, is somebody ready to call question on the motion? Meaning, are you ready now to say, yes, we approve the document as it is? Once the question has been called, the vote will be taken. And in cases of a document, the vote will just be a yea or nay. Once they say yea, yes, Chair, we now approve that document, the secretary will take that document exactly the way it is, with the amendments made, which will be corrected now in printed documents to make sure it comes out now corrected on soft copy. That constitutes the minutes. So in the recording of the minutes by the secretary, she or he will say, voted to approve the budget as per attachment. Then the document is attached. This is what is meant by stating the proposed actions and amendments in the process of taking minutes. In the event that the item is not on a document, because what I'm describing are actions on documented material or materials on paper. In the event it is, let's say, a disciplinary case, which may not have notes, but which may have investigations done by the senior deacons and the deacons, and they have simply highlighted the case. Because usually we do not encourage descriptive notes on sins committed. We encourage verbal articulation of what has happened, and then a motion is made. The motion, at the time it is being made, the secretary and the chairperson will both say, or will both write down the motion. The person making the motion, in this case the head deacon, will say, whereas sister so and so, whereas brother so and so engaged in gambling that has led to the sufferings in his home and is contrary to the teachings of the Adventist Church, and whereas he has admitted, whereas he is also very sorry that he did this, and whereas he is willing to seek the help of the Lord and the church to change, we recommend that this brother, this sister be censured for 3 months. I move chair. Those words are recorded because they serve as the basis for the motion. The chair will say, is the motion seconded? It will be seconded, discussed, and after discussion, voted upon. Keep in mind, we are talking about taking minutes. The secretary now and the chairman of the board, the chair will say, before the vote is taken, I will have the secretary read what she recorded. Why is the chairman doing that? The chairman is doing that to make sure that the caption of the description that came from the action is accurate by the recording secretary and on his own notes. And let me say this to the secretary who's recording. When they ask you to read the motion before voting it, please read exactly what you have written on paper, not what you heard. Because what you will read is what people are going to vote on. If you simply say it as you heard it, you may say it accurately and people vote it, but when you will go to write the minutes, you will forget the actual words you used. So when you are asked to read what you wrote down from what you heard. Whereas, you read exactly, then you says, voted to. Once you have read and the chairman calls for a vote on the item and the vote is approved, then you take those same words, you simply move them from the language of a proposed action to a voted or approved action. It becomes your minutes. I don't know how I can put this. Secretary, those notes you are taking are so important that you dare not lose them. Because that is why, actually, as we will look on the points yet to come, you will see how those papers are important and the time you need to immediately work on them. So I have covered dealing with printed documents and then reading the proposed motion before voting, and then minutes should be produced within 7 days from the day of the meeting. Why is that a best practice? Number one, if the secretary had taken accurate transactions, including read through each motion before it is voted, the only job left is for the secretary to type that if they are not already typed, because the secretary may be using a laptop, may have even put on the screen the amendments or the actual wording of the action taken. In that case, all that is to be done is assemble these minutes in one document called minutes. It can be done in 1 day, in 2 days, in 3 days to the most. In the meetings that I have been involved in chairing and in minute production, these are the principles we have followed, and I have seen that within 3 days, the secretary will bring the minutes to me as chair to review the accuracy, to make sure that what she wrote and what I have are exactly and reflect the actions taken. I put there 7 days to make sure that the minutes have been taken and written so that you have time to distribute them, because you may have another church board coming up soon. Church boards should be held at least once a month. That's what the church manual says. But if possible, more than once. Once is the minimum. Once is the minimum. Because the agenda of the church board, as you would remember in my first presentation, has to do with the growth, the nurturing, and the discipling, and the mentoring of the church. And that is something that happens very frequently in terms of implementation and doing it. Now that we've covered the taking of minutes, maybe you might want at this time to either yourself or in a smaller group reflect over some of the common mistakes made that makes minute production a very hard task. You might want to pause the watching of this presentation and discuss elements of the importance of minutes and the elements of taking accurate minutes. Then you can continue. And so let's now capture the writing of minutes. What should be in the document you receive as minutes of the board? These elements are so important. These elements are so important that if you do not, or if you miss some of them, you could actually miss a very important point. Remember, minutes, and I hope it doesn't happen, but the minutes of the board can find themselves in a court of law or in a business meeting if they ask for the readings of the minutes. So minutes should have the name of the meeting. Rusangu University International Church Board Meeting. That's the name. Held on November 4, 2021. Starting time 09 hours. Ending time 12 hours. Venue held at Rusangu University Church. Those elements indicate and capture the name of the board or the meeting, the date the meeting was held, when the meeting started and when the meeting ended, and where the meeting took place. Then you are to record in the minutes the members present, the members who sent apologies, and the members who were just absent without apologies. That's important to show because a question might arise. Who were present when this action was taken? When people would need clarification, they will say, Chair, according to the minutes, Pastor Pardon Mwansa was present in this meeting. Can you, Pastor Pardon Mwansa, explain to us what happened or what you meant by action such and such? So the members are recorded, apologies are recorded, and absenteeisms are recorded on the same document. Then you come to actions or resolutions made, and they are recorded in numbering form. You as a local church will have to agree with the chair and the church clerk as to how you will number the minutes. But what I have seen helpful in minutes I have looked at is most minutes are kept in annual files. They are filed as minutes of 2021 or 2020 or 2019. That being the case, actions taken, let's say, on November 4th would have preceded a lot of actions, would have followed a lot of actions that have been taken in the first 10 months of the year. And so, the action might be action 17. But in order to show when the action, the numbering the action, you may number action number 1 on the day 4th of November. You may simply say action 1 or action 2021, that's representing the year it was taken, action 17. And action 17 will mean before this action, you have 16 actions that you have taken. That way, your minutes are numbered in such a way that when a person takes up the document, they will say they took action 17 of the year 2021 in the minutes recorded on such and such a date is this. It's important that you number each action by a specific number. When you will be writing letters, which I will talk about in a minute, you will refer to the action number. All the minutes finally should have the signature of the chairperson and the secretary of the board. If minutes are not signed, they actually are not a legal document. Yes, they may be accurate minutes, but the signature is what says the above minutes have been now approved, recorded as accurate minutes. Those elements must be on a document you receive as minutes. So let's now deal with communicating the actions taken. You now have been writing minutes, taking minutes. You have now composed or generated minutes. You have now put them into a document that is signed, and you are now at the stage of communicating the actions. What's involved? Number one, all actions of a board must be communicated to relevant authorities. Who are the relevant authorities? Members of the board need to receive a copy of the minutes. Members of the board receive minutes because they have to know it's their right. It's the right of a church board member to receive and even keep minutes of the board where they are members. That's a right. So that's the first group that will receive the minutes. But then the minutes themselves dictate who else should receive. And now you start writing all actions to relevant people. Let me explain. When you approved the budget in the church board, with the amendments that you made, the budget is an instrument that will be used by all departments of the church. The heads of the departments, the treasurer. Therefore, you are to write to the people concerned, dear so and so, find attached action number 2021-17 of the church board that sat on such and such a day for your implementation. And then you quote the action exactly as it is in the minutes. You quote it exactly as it is in the minutes. You write to the director, to the youth leader of the youths. Find attached a document for your implementation as per approved action of the board so and so. You quote it, and all of them receive. Communicating actions or resolutions should be in writing. Writing serves as something people can refer to. They will not forget. They will not be guessing. They will not be, what did they say? No. Now let me talk about communicating disciplinary actions to offenders. I couldn't find a better word to use than offenders, but it's not a polite word. But communicating disciplinary actions to those affected, that sounds much more kind. Disciplinary disciplinary cases must be communicated differently from communicating actions that refer to plans, to budgets, to strategies. Because disciplinary actions involve people, and people have emotions. Therefore, in communicating the disciplinary actions, I suggest you consider the following. First of all, make sure the very top officials of the church board, in this case, the pastor himself who's the chairperson, or his designee, the head elder, are the ones who, in the company of one or two people, go to visit the erring brother, the erring sister. First of all, on a face-to-face meeting, before they deliver the written letter. That visit is intended to be human. It is intended to send a message of we care, we love you, we are with you. And when the pastor gets there, the pastor will coordinate the meeting by indicating that the matter in which you were involved, sister so-and-so, brother so-and-so, was discussed at the church board. It was with heavy hearts that the church board listened to the elements of this matter. The church board members prayed for you. They realized what you did. They deviated from the standards of the church and put the church to disrepute. But the church also recognizes that you are sorry and that it's not your intention to perpetuate that kind of life. And so the church board in sitting recommended that you be put on censure for 3 months. Our coming here is to pray with you, to encourage you, to ask you for anything you may want us to do to help you solidify your faith with God, especially during this time when you'll be on censure. Then the pastor will pray for that person in a very spiritual atmosphere. The pastor will say, the church clerk will send the letter to you reflecting the action that was taken, which will essentially cover the words that I have shared with you. Even when the pastor leaves the door of that church member is encouraged. It is not appropriate. It is not okay. It is not the best practice to simply send a letter to a member disciplined without being in touch with them with a personal touch. By the way, let me mention 2 very important things here. They are not in my notes on the screen, but they are important. No church board member is authorized to communicate to the offending church member the action of the board, except appropriate authorities. You know, you are a church board member, but it's not your right to say, you know what, I know the church elders will call you and tell you that you were censured for 8 months, but I just want you to know that you've been censured for 8 months. That is inappropriate behavior. It's not your responsibility, so don't take it up. Remember, if you do that, you have deprived the church of the nurturing of that member, which is that visit which the pastor has to pay to that person. That visit is very crucial. That visit says, we love you. We love you. The action we took to censure you is a hard action. But we love you, and we can't wait to have you back in the church as a regular member. By the way, and if a person was removed from church record, or from a membership, remember, in very rare cases, really rare cases, and the only person who should be removed from church record is a defiant person who says, I don't believe in the Sabbath doctrine, or I don't believe in the doctrines of the SDA church, or who has done something over which they are not sorry and they don't want to change. And they say, get out of my face. Those are the only people who are to be regarded as heathens. But even those, we are to continue praying for them. The second thing I wanted to mention, that's not on the screen, is that all disciplinary actions, as I stated in my earlier presentations, are recommendations to the business meeting and should not be communicated to the person concerned until the business meeting has approved the recommendation of the church board. I will restate that. The fact that in the church board you have taken an action to recommend to censure a member for 8 months does not mean once your minutes are reflected, you are to go and inform that person. When it comes to disciplinary cases, censure or removal from church record, it is the prerogative of the church. The church meaning the church in business sitting, composed or constituted of all baptized church members of that particular church. It could be that in the business meeting, the 8 months you had recommended for censure may be reduced. The membership, which is the church, might say, you know, some of us have been talking to sister so-and-so, to brother so-and-so. She's very sorry. You know, the penalty of 8 months is severe to a person who is repentant. Can we consider reducing it to 5 months? And they have the right to do that. They have the right to do that without referring it back to the church board, because the business meeting is the one that constituted the church board and has higher powers above those of the church board. This is why it is important that you wait and not communicate carelessly actions of disciplinary nature. This said, let's now go to record keeping. You realize we have covered the purpose of minutes, we've covered taking minutes, we've covered writing of minutes, we've covered communicating minutes. Now we come to record keeping. It is sad, very sad, when you go to a church that was organized in 1980 and you ask for their minutes, they don't have them. Or they have them from the year 2017. What has happened to the records of the church board of all the years before? We don't know. When the church clerk was changed, she did not hand over anything, so we don't have records. That's very common. To avoid that, please take note of the following observations. Number one, file minutes in an annual filing system. Create a folder for 2021 and start keeping all the minutes. At least if you follow one church board per month, you will have at least 12 sets of minutes in that folder. Nicely bind it, nicely label it, the name of the church, Rusangu University, then minutes of 2021, January to December. Then when you've done that, and you have bound that, and they are with signatures, minutes should be easily accessible, and that's why you file them in years, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, and so on and so forth. That way, they are easily accessible. You are able to say, who were our church board members in 2013? You just go to 2013 folder and you see it there. And you say, oh, okay, so this is what happened. Lastly, keep minutes in a designated safe place. A place that is fireproof, where rats cannot go and eat the papers. In today's modern age, when actually soft copies are even better, make sure that in addition to the hard copies you have filed, you do have soft copies kept, signed, scanned as signed minutes. With electronic systems now, you can actually have electronic signatures on the minutes. So keep the minutes in a designated safe place, and if it's kept in soft copy, make sure it's in the clouds safe so that if the computer is stolen, you still can retrieve those minutes from the clouds. Now, let me say this as I come to the closing of this presentation, and actually closing all three presentations in this series. The series have been focusing on chairing effective church board meetings. If you as a church board, you as the chair of the church board, the secretary of the church board, if you have followed these three big components of what constitutes chairing effective meetings, I guarantee you that you will be an effective church board, which will be described as, this is an effective church board chaired in an effective manner. You spend time preparing for the church board. And in my first presentation, I articulated what constitutes good preparation for church board meetings. Then you come to the actual day of chairing the meetings. And I articulated what you need to do on that day, how you should transact the business, how you should take actions, and how you should close meetings. And now we have covered how you should communicate effectively the actions taken by the board. Great members, directors, church board members, leaders, if you follow these principles that have been articulated in these 3 presentations, be it in the chairing of your church boards, be it in the chairing of your committee meetings, be it in the chairing of your district meetings, be it in the chairing of your union meetings, division meetings, general conference, or any, if these elements are adhered to, I guarantee you that you will have successful meetings. You will have effective meetings. The Lord will give you wisdom to know how to deal with complicated matters that may come outside of what I have presented. But this which has been presented constitutes the bigger 3 basics of how to manage and chair effective meetings. As we come to the end of not only this 3rd presentation, but the presentations of all 3, I would now like to say, maybe it is time again to go in your various groups, or to just take a pen, 1 or 2 of you, and reflect on pertinent questions arising from the presentations that have been made. It's been good sharing with you these principles. This is your friend, Dr. Pardon Mwansa. Thank you so much. Blessings.